Well, thank you for joining us here today. Today up here we have from the District Attorney's Office, our great partner, the First Deputy Assistant District Attorney Michael Kane. We have Samantha King, Assistant District Attorney, Under Sheriff Bill Cooley, and our great Chief of Narcotics, DJ Granville, who he and his detectives did an outstanding job again. And, you know, there's a lot that goes into this. The information you have to gather, the probable cause, the search warrant, the handling of fentanyl, which is so very dangerous. And we've seen cases around the country where people, law enforcement, have been overcome by the fentanyl. This case took us to Grand Island. So this is not a City of Buffalo problem. This is not really even an Erie County problem. This is a state problem and a national problem. We continue to deal with people peddling these poisons in the community, and if cocaine and heroin weren't dangerous enough, now we have fentanyl as that cutting agent. Aside from that, as you see here, illegal handguns, multiple illegal handguns in the town of Grand Island. I'm going to turn it over to the undersheriff to give you a timeline and details of the case, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff. So back in 2021, the Erie County Sheriff's Narco and Intel Unit began receiving anonymous complaints about 42-year-old Anson Whittage drug trafficking activities in Buffalo and the surrounding suburbs. As these investigations often go, this information led to an investigation, but at the time, no arrests. This case was reopened approximately 1 month ago when Whitted was identified as trafficking narcotics from his residence located on Carl Street in the town of Grand Island. Last Thursday, a search warrant was signed by New York State Supreme Court Judge Betty Calvo-Torres for Whitted's person, his vehicle, and his residence. During the early afternoon hours of Friday, July 14th, Whitted was observed by sheriff's detectives departing his Grand Island residence. He was a front seat passenger in his own SUV, and the vehicle was being driven by a female and their small child occupied the rear seat of the vehicle. Whitted was stopped by patrol deputies on the 190 near Niagara Street, where he was taken into custody. Whitted, the female driver, and the child were transported to the sheriff's Grand Island substation. While being transported to the station, Whitted was observed attempting to hide contraband in the back seat, and this led to the recovery of 1/8 of an ounce of a combination of cocaine and fentanyl. All the while, this traffic stop and surveillance was being conducted, sheriff's narcotics and intel detectives were executing a search warrant at the Carl Street address, where they encountered a loose, very aggressive pit bull. The detectives were able to capture the dog and safely secure the dog in a cage. A search of the residence resulted in the recovery of 2 assault rifles, to include an AK-47 and an AR-15 that was stolen out of Garfield Heights, Ohio. 3 handguns, a Glock 40 cal, which was outfitted with a switch, which effectively makes this weapon a fully automatic machine gun, and 2 other handguns, to include a Glock 9mm and a Taurus 45 caliber. Also recovered was a large cache of high-capacity magazines and ammunition, approximately 1/2 kilogram of cocaine crack combination, and approximately 50 grams of fentanyl, and a quantity of U.S. currency. It's also important to note all the firearms were loaded at the time of recovery. Whitted is a 3-time convicted felon, 2 of which are violent felonies. He's currently being held at the Erie County Holding Center. Assisting with this investigation was Child Protective Services. They were contacted to deal and interface with the child and female, which were released in this investigation. And the Erie Crime Analysis Center assisted with intel gathering, and the DA's office assists with legal counsel and the procurement of the search warrants. I'd like to commend Chief Granville and his team for just an outstanding job in making our community a little bit safer, like they always do. So with that, I'll turn it over to First Deputy District Attorney Mike Kane from the DA's office. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bill. So on behalf of John Flynn and the Erie County District Attorney's Office, I want to thank you all for coming, and once again thank Sheriff John Garcia and Under Sheriff Bill Cooley and the rest of their team. This is a spectacular job by all of their detectives and the workers that go in to this months-long investigation. In fact, it goes back a couple of years, as Under Sheriff Cooley mentioned. The people that don't get the recognition, a lot of them are standing behind you here today, and they do all the hard work, quite frankly, that takes months and months of time on these kinds of cases. You can see by the weaponry that's on the table in front of you. This is a dangerous man. This is a dangerous situation, and we are fortunate to be able to be partners with the Sheriff's Department. Our Narcotics and Intelligence Unit works closely with them, specifically Detective Granville, and with our office, John Gherkin, who is not here today, but he's the Bureau Chief of Narcotics and Intelligence Unit, along with Samantha King, who's an Assistant District Attorney working hand in hand with John Gherkin on this case. This man has been charged with 8 felonies and 4 misdemeanors. The most, well, they're all serious, but the most significant of which is the A1 felony, the possession of the cocaine, as well as the fentanyl possession. The A1 felony carries with it a minimum life prison of 15 to life to 25 to life. So we are confident that Mr. Whitted is going to be removed from the streets for a significant period of time and keep this community safe. In addition to that, the number of guns here, there were 5 different loaded guns that were seized from him. That is a separate count under New York State penal law, criminal possession of a weapon in the 2nd degree. There were a number of counts there, and as Under Sheriff Cooley mentioned, one of the guns was an automatic weapon, and so we're lucky to have been able to remove those guns from the street, and they won't be able to use to hurt anybody. So at this point, this moves into our area of completing the investigation and then prosecuting Mr. Whitted. There was a 2-year-old child with him in the home when the search warrant was executed, and a woman who, it's my understanding they had some sort of relationship, but I won't get into that in any more detail. But that's the reason for the endangering the welfare of a child count in this case. That's essentially it. We're going to move forward here with again, completing the investigation and prosecution of Mr. Whitted, and that completes my remarks. But if I'll turn it over to the Sheriff's Department unless anybody has any specific questions for me.
That was his child?
Pardon me?
That was his child in the SUV?
I don't know about that. I don't. DJ, you want to handle it?
Yes, it was his child.
Now, were these found in the home, these weapons, or did he have one on him when he made the traffic stop?
So it's important to note, Ron, that all these weapons were loaded. Thank goodness he did not have a weapon when he was stopped. I can't say enough about the chief, Chief Granville, and his detectives, because you have all these weapons that are ready to go. He was taken down on the thruway without incident. You have fentanyl in the car, nobody got hurt. But you have a 2-year-old, you have law enforcement in the house, you had an aggressive pit bull. He was taking, securely without any shots fired and so forth. And then all these weapons. I mean, thank God that he was able to be taken down in his vehicle and not armed, because we just don't know what the result would have been from that.
You think this is his personal stash, or is he trafficking these guns, or selling them, or?
Well, as the undersheriff said, 2 of the weapons are stolen out of Ohio. But if, and I'm just assuming this, is that it's protecting his narcotics trade. And, it's a very violent business, as we all know. And this goes to show you, this is in the town of Grand Island. People say about, the city of Buffalo and so forth. This is going on throughout the county. And, last year we had a lot more overdose deaths than we had homicides or shootings. So, this is a really serious problem. We can't say it enough times. This fentanyl, we need the New York State Legislature to step up and come up with a penal law code that will make fentanyl legal and all the other analogs. And for those that are serving this poison up, I think it's, you're killing people. I think it's murder. So, you know, we will continue to fight and go after these people peddling the poison and in all the communities.
Was that female driver in that SUV, could she also face charges, and perhaps was she aiding or abetting in all this?
Well, at this time, she is not. But, you know, the district attorney's office and the Erie County Sheriff's Office, we're going to get together and we'll see if there's charges coming down for her.
Talk a little bit about the 2021 investigation. How long did that go for? And then you said it stopped. You know, why did it stop?
Because we did not have, at that time, enough probable cause to continue that investigation. There's a lot of calls that come in, and thank goodness we get calls from the Good Samaritans out there, the witnesses, and if it weren't for the people out there giving us these tips, a lot of these investigations wouldn't go forward. So we pursued that case. It ended without having enough information. Here we go again with another complaint. At this point, we did get enough information, enough probable cause to reach out to the district attorney's office, which, by the way, we have a great working relationship. The assistant district attorney, John Gherkin, in charge of narcotics, and Chief Granville, you know, 24 hours, everyone's available, made that call, and had the probable cause to get the search warrants signed by Betty Calva-Torres for his person, the vehicle, and the residence. So at that point, he was stopped safely, without incident, thank God. 2-year-old in the car, you know, people driving around, it could have gone sideways, but it goes to show the professionalism of the Erie County Sheriff's Narcotics Squad.
Did you choose to take him on the highway rather than home because of the guns and the pit bull and all the other hazards you didn't know?
Well, you know, I don't want to talk about that, but thank God it happened that way. As you see, look at these firearms. First Deputy Assistant District Attorney Mike Keene said one was fully automatic, you know. So you have detectives going in with a bulletproof vest against this weaponry, and it could have been very bad in an area in Carroll Street in Grand Island where, you know, it's a residential area. So thank God that it went down without any incidents like that, but it was part of the investigation.
Do you expect more arrests?
Well, to follow up with the question, you know, posed earlier regarding the girlfriend, there may be more come and run.
I just meant, I don't know how you can get it. It almost looks like this guy could have been a ringleader. I mean, do you expect more gang act, or more gang members, or whoever you want, how you want to phrase this?
You know, we never stopped the investigation. I mean, these guns, the cocaine, the fentanyl had to come from somewhere. So we always try to move up, move sideways, move down, whichever way. But you know, it's an ongoing investigation at this point. And but you know, you're absolutely correct. It's a good question. We always continue moving the investigation forward.
And how much money was seized?
Roughly $5,000.
$5,000. And that's always part of the investigation is, you know, is there another stash house and so forth and so on. So, you know, it's part of the ongoing investigation.
So he lived in Buffalo or lived in Grand Island? I'm sorry, correct me. I thought you said something about Buffalo originally, the original investigation.
So the traffic stop was, yeah.
So
Go ahead, Chief.
the initial investigation, which I think you're referring to in 2021,
That complaint came in the city of Buffalo, where he was believed to be residing at that time. About a month ago, another tip had come in which resulted in this investigation here. And just to set the scene for you a little bit, the traffic stop occurs on the 190 in and around like Niagara Street in that area. There's a 2-year-old in the back seat that's not in a car seat, that's running freely. You got a female that's attempting to get to her phone, and you got him who's a nervous wreck because he has drugs on him. And it's kind of a very chaotic scene. It's very dangerous for our uniformed deputies to be doing at that time of day on the 190, as you can imagine. And then separately from that, we go to enter the residence on Carl Road. There's a very, very aggressive, big, loose pit bull, which we were able to, thank God, because we're all animal lovers here. We didn't have to, use any lethal force on this dog. We were able to corral him into a cage. And then in open view, in a bedroom just off of the kitchen, we find a bunch of these weapons. There was weapons all over the house, fentanyl, cocaine. I mean, if there were other individuals there or other drug dealers, which oftentimes there are, this could have been a very, very dangerous, chaotic scene. And, thank God our deputies and our detectives are safe, and thank God no other residents or anybody else got hurt. I think it's important to note that we used our tactics, training, and experience to do this the proper way. You got kids involved. It's a nightmare for these kids, and thankfully it all worked out.
So the traffic stop on the 190 near Niagara and Buffalo, and then the raid search warrant at that home in Grand Island.
That's correct, and he's been charged in the town of Tonawanda only because while en route, he was being transported from the traffic stop in a marked police vehicle up to the Grand Island substation. While being transported there, he was attempting to discard some contraband or secrete it even further. So the deputy made a move to get off the 190, pulled into a parking lot area, retrieved those drugs, and then we continued with our investigation.
How many deputies were involved in all this between the search and what happened on 190?
You got to understand that there's a lot that goes into an investigation like this. There's a ton of surveillance. There's a ton of documentation that has to be done. There's a ton of logistical stuff. Like I just mentioned, a 2-year-old. We have to take that into consideration. Dogs, weapons, etc. There's a lot that goes in behind the scenes before the day of and before we make our move on that person. But in this investigation, there was probably a dozen or so, that worked, countless hours to take what you see here and up here off the streets. I think it's important to note.
What does the judge need to see from you guys before issuing the warrant?
A judge needs to, we need to establish probable cause, and the judge decides whether or not that exists, and if it does exist, he or she then signs that warrant.
Can you explain that chain or necklace up there?
That chain there is a chain that the defendant was wearing on the day of this investigation. We believe that chain was purchased with drug proceeds. Therefore, we'll have it appraised, and if it fits the criteria, we'll move for forfeiture.
What about the shoebox here?
The shoebox here, and I'll just point up to the screen here. This is the open shoebox here, which contains the cocaine and fentanyl. And that was secreted in the fridge of the home with, obviously other items of food and baby formula, etc.
So the handgun had this, whatever you call the switch on it. It's made fully automatic, but in that picture, looks like that one rifle, whatever it is, has like a rotary drum on it.
Yeah, it's a drum. As the undersheriff had mentioned, there was a cache of ammunition recovered, to include magazines that were loaded with ammo. And as the sheriff had mentioned, because again, in 2021, this investigation was initiated. Here we are in 2023. I can't say enough about the sheriff, the undersheriff, Mike Kane, and the relationship we have with the DA's office. These two right here have been there, done that. They've done this job. It makes it a lot easier. It's a seamless process when I'm picking up the phone and calling my boss and saying, hey, this is what we got. This is kind of how we're thinking about moving forward. And I get advice from these two guys all the time because they've been there and done that. It's really, really made the process streamlined, and we're able to do what you see here.
What are all these mixing cutting it right there, or has he got a lab in there? Or?
So, yeah, so oftentimes, as we know up here, drug dealers will try to stretch their product a little bit, and stretch in quotation marks. They'll take a quantity of cocaine and mix it with, whether it's some type of vitamin or whatever they mix it with, fentanyl, et cetera, and they stretch that out to increase their profits, and that's what you see here.
Yeah, so this blender right here, you'll see the residue right there, and they put the cocaine, in this case, the cocaine with the fentanyl, and it makes the cocaine, obviously, stretching out. It's a bigger profit because a kilo of cocaine is worth so much more than a kilo of fentanyl. But, you know, going back to the times I was working in narcotics, and I mentioned this before, the heroin dealers would put a laxative in there because their customers would get binded up and so forth, and the cocaine dealers used to put Vitablend in there, baking soda. Now you're dealing with fentanyl. And let's say, you know, they really want to make a big profit, right? So they're putting very little cocaine and putting a lot of fentanyl. We've seen more overdoses last year in Erie County than in any other year before. This is a serious problem. We have to attack fentanyl. You know, like I said, cocaine and heroin, dangerous enough. Now you're putting in this poison in there that is killing people. And if it wasn't for the amount of Narcan that's being administered throughout the whole county, we'd be in 4 digits. Over 1,000 people dead. We had 400 people dead last year. This is a serious issue. Not only is it something that keeps me up at night on the street, but people coming in after being arrested and secreting it and bringing it into the jails. And so, you know, like Chief Granville said, I mean, this operation went well. I could be up here saying that the guy got up from his bed, grabbed that automatic weapon, shot at law enforcement, shot back. This could have been really a bad situation. So, really, my hat's off to the chief, Chief Granville, his detectives. Without incident, took out a very violent individual, 2-time convicted felon, and here you go. Here he's protecting his business with a fully automatic illegal weapon and other weapons, fentanyl. That if that would have gone up in the air when he was trying to secrete it in the back seat in the Erie County Sheriff's deputy's vehicle, we could have had an issue. When I heard that there was a 2-year-old involved, an aggressive pit bull in a residential area, handguns, it's a nightmare. It really is. So, great job. He was taken into custody outside the house. You know, we're all very happy he wasn't armed. We don't know what his reaction would have been, but here we are just taking some violent criminal that's peddling poison, has handguns off the street, and we'll see where it goes from here.
What's the next step for him now?
I'm sorry?
What's the next step for him now?
So,
He'll be back in, there's a felony hearing scheduled. He'll be back in court to, you know, appear before the judge on these charges. And whether we run a felony hearing or not is, you know, remains to be seen. And then from there, we'll be scheduling time before the grand jury.
Can you say
He's
what the previous?
convicted of a felony, he's looking at life in jail, right? 3-time felony?
Well, it depends on what he's convicted of, but if he's convicted of just the cocaine alone is an A1 felony, and the minimum on that is 15 to life or 25 to life. So, and the guns are violent felonies. We're still looking at his criminal history to determine exactly what he would be facing, whether he's what we call persistent violent in New York. That would be 3 violent felony convictions. So it remains to be seen, but safe to say he's exposed to a significant period of time in prison.
Can you say what the previous felonies were? I think you said 3, correct?
Yes, he's a 3-time convicted felon, 2 of which were violent. I don't have his criminal history in front of me right now, and I don't think I'd want to put that on the, you know, in front of the media right now. Yes, 2 of the 3 were violent felony convictions.
Does the fentanyl make it worse?
Well, believe it or not, the fentanyl charge is only a B felony. and I say only a B felony, but it's compared to cocaine, which obviously, as we all know, fentanyl is a much more dangerous drug. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it like that. But the gun charges are actually the violent felonies for which he's exposed to potentially persistent violent felony status. Even though the gun charges all individually are C violent felonies, which is not as serious, I suppose, as a B felony or an A1 felony. I hope that's answering your question.
I'm sure Mr. Zilko over there will put out a press release, but could you spell this individual's name for us?
Whitted. First name Anson, A-N-S-O-N.
You don't have mug shots, you don't?
You said he's 42, right?
That's correct. Cool. Everybody done?
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have